The world believed it understood what had happened. The case was closed within days, the files sealed, the verdict delivered with the cold efficiency of institutional certainty. For 30 years, the official record stood undisturbed, a ruling, a note, a sealed room above a Seattle garage. And for 30 years, most of the world moved on, carrying the grief of April 1994 like a scar that never fully healed. But in the opening months of 2026, something shifted. An independent team of forensic scientists published peer-reviewed findings that the Seattle Police Department had not anticipated, conclusions drawn from the same evidence that had always existed: crime scene photographs, toxicology records, autopsy documentation, pointing toward a verdict very different from the one the world had accepted for 3 decades. The man at the center of this story needs no introduction. Kurt Donald Cobain was born on February 20th, 1967, in Aberdeen, Washington, a town that seemed architecturally designed to diminish the people it raised. He grew up in a household fractured by divorce, in a body that had begun betraying him before adolescence was finished. Chronic gastric pain arrived early and never left, a companion that physicians across nearly a decade of consultations could not diagnose, could not treat, and could not explain. By the time he was 15, the pain had become the central organizing fact of his interior life. He found punk music before he found anything else, and punk music gave him a language for the thing living inside his chest. He did not aspire to become a rock star. He aspired to be honest. That distinction would define everything that followed, including the way the world eventually lost him. By September of 1991, the world had constructed a different destiny for him. Nevermind arrived on September 24th of that year, and the collision between Kurt Cobain's private fury and the commercial appetite of the music industry produced something no one had fully anticipated. The album did not simply succeed, it consumed. Within months, grunge had migrated from the rehearsal spaces of Seattle into the mainstream arteries of American culture, and Kurt Cobain found himself famous in a way that felt less like achievement and more like captivity. He had wanted to make punk music. He was told he had invented a genre. He had wanted to be understood. He was instead worshipped. The distance between what he intended and what the world received became, over the following 3 years, something he could not bridge. But beneath the public narrative, something more fundamental was quietly destroying him. The chronic pain that had followed him since childhood had never resolved. Nearly a decade of medical consultations had produced no lasting diagnosis and no lasting relief. Heroin, which entered his life in the years surrounding Nirvana's rise, accomplished what no physician had managed: it silenced the pain. This is not a detail that can be extracted from the story of what followed. It is, according to those who knew him and to the medical record that exists, the foundational fact of his dependency. Not recklessness, not a performance of rock star mythology, but a response to something that had been eroding him since before anyone in the world knew his name. The public saw the behavior and produced a verdict. The body behind the behavior had been in documented agony for over a decade. The weeks leading into April 1994 were not quiet, and the record of those weeks matters. On March 1st of that year, Kurt was found unresponsive in a Rome hotel room. The official account described the incident as an accidental overdose, a combination of champagne and prescription sedatives, but the quantity of substances involved and specific observations recorded by hotel personnel generated questions that the word accident did not fully answer. He was in a coma for 20 hours. He was discharged on March 4th and returned to Seattle. Then on March 18th, police were called to his Lake Washington Boulevard home following a reported domestic disturbance. Firearms were removed from the property. Something had shifted in the architecture of those final weeks, and the people closest to him could feel its weight. In early April, he disappeared from all points of contact. For 6 days, one of the most recognizable musicians on the planet was completely unreachable. No phone, no location, no confirmation that he was alive. His wife engaged a private investigator named Tom Grant to find him. His mother filed a missing persons report on April 4th, citing fears that he might harm himself. On April 5th, by the reconstruction that investigators later assembled, he returned to his home on Lake Washington Boulevard and entered the greenhouse above the garage. On April 8th, an electrician arriving to install security lighting discovered him there. The ruling was delivered quickly. The case was classified. The world was told the story had ended. It had not ended. It had merely been paused. Tom Grant, the private investigator who had been working the case in real time, began speaking publicly in the months that followed about inconsistencies he had observed in the evidence and the timeline. A Seattle journalist produced public access segments arguing that the physical record did not align with the official conclusion. Documentaries were produced. Books were written. In 2014, on the 20th anniversary of Kurt's death, the Seattle Police Department conducted a formal review examining undeveloped film rolls and reanalyzing scene photographs. Their conclusion was unchanged. The ruling was reaffirmed. For those who had been asking questions for 2 decades, it felt like a door being closed rather than a search being completed. Then came 2026, and something arrived that was structurally different from everything that had come before. In the opening months of that year, multiple established news organizations reported on the published findings of an independent forensic research team that had conducted its own analysis of the existing materials. The distinction that mattered was methodological. These findings had been peer-reviewed, submitted to scrutiny by specialists in relevant fields before being made public. Forensic expert Brian Burnett, working in conjunction with researcher Michelle Wilkins, concluded after examining the available evidence that the physical record was more consistent with the staged scene than with the self-inflicted scenario that had stood as the official account for 3 decades. This was a significant claim. It was also a documented, reviewed, published one. The argument assembled around 3 specific observations. The first was toxicological. The concentration of a particular substance found in Kurt's system was, according to the team's analysis, approximately 20 times beyond the typically lethal threshold. Wilkins, citing Burnett's examination, argued that an individual carrying that concentration would have been in a state of near total physical incapacitation, barely capable of sustaining basic respiration, let alone coordinating deliberate voluntary movement with the precision the official scenario required. The argument Tom Grant had made years earlier from intuition had now arrived with a technical framework around it. The second observation concerned what the scene itself communicated. The forensic team described the environment as unusually ordered for the circumstances the official ruling proposed. A substance kit found in proximity to the scene appeared arranged with a care and deliberateness inconsistent with the physical condition of someone in the state described. Additionally, the condition of a hand found in contact with a firearm did not display, in the team's reading of existing scene photographs, the visible evidence that specialists would expect. Wilkins stated the conclusion plainly. The visual evidence was not consistent with what the official account described. Taken individually, each observation might be read as ambiguous. Taken as a pattern, the team argued, they pointed in a specific direction. The third observation concerned the note. A handwritten document had been found at the scene, addressed to Kurt's childhood imaginary friend Boda, and it had been read from the beginning as the definitive record of his final intentions. The forensic team did not dispute the note's existence or its primary content. What they identified was a visual discrepancy in the closing portion. The handwriting in the final lines appeared larger, more pressured, and stylistically distinct from the text that preceded it. Their assessment did not present this as a proven conclusion. It was stated as a forensic observation requiring explanation. The closing section may not have been produced by the same hand or at the same moment in time. The institutional response came, and it was measured and firm. The Seattle Police Department maintained its original ruling without qualification. The King County Medical Examiner's Office stated they were open to reviewing new evidence, but had seen nothing that would justify reopening the case. 2 distinct positions, separated by 30 years of institutional certainty. Neither constituted movement. As of early 2026, the official classification of Kurt Cobain's death had not changed. The case remained officially closed. What this moment represents cannot be reduced to a binary choice. The 2026 peer-reviewed analysis does not prove what happened in that room above the garage. It offers a different reading of materials that have been examined before through a methodology that specialists in relevant fields considered credible enough to validate and publish. The private investigator who worked the case in April 1994 raised similar points more than 2 decades earlier without institutional validation. The questions themselves are not new. What changed in 2026 was the rigor of the structure around them. Whether that is sufficient to move institutions that have reviewed and closed this case multiple times is a question that cannot yet be answered. What cannot be set aside, regardless of where the official record lands, is the person behind the story. Kurt Cobain was a man in profound and documented pain. Physical pain that had defined his existence since adolescence. Psychological pain that fame had amplified rather than treated. Whatever happened in that greenhouse on April 5, 1994, it happened to someone who had been suffering for a long time, who had attempted to ask for help in ways that were not always received, who had spent years trying to survive something the people around him could not fully reach. His daughter Frances Bean, who was not yet 2 years old when she lost her father, has said publicly that he was a sick man, not a bad one. That framing, illness rather than failure, pain rather than weakness, is the one that the history of these 30 years seems to be slowly, imperfectly moving toward. The 2026 forensic report did not close this case. It refused to allow it to stay closed without explanation. And perhaps that refusal, the insistence that evidence deserves honest examination, that the details of a human life matter enough to look at carefully, is itself a form of respect, not for a legend, not for an icon, for a person, for the man behind the myth who spent his entire public life trying to be seen clearly, and who 30 years after his death is still waiting for that clarity to arrive. If you or someone you know is struggling with chronic pain, substance dependency, or thoughts of self-harm, support is available and you do not have to face it alone. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available by call or text. Help exists. Reaching out is not weakness, it is the beginning of something different.